Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be jumping into a discussion about casual speech in Japan, or in Japanese rather. It'll be impossible to cover all aspects of casual speech, even with several lessons, but we're going to jump into some of the basics, and hopefully you'll have a better feel for it once we're done. Now, today's mostly going to be a day talking about mechanics, how to actually form casual forms of verbs, adjectives, and whatnot. But before that, we need to talk about what casual speech actually is. And this, I really harp on this, and those of you that have been in my lessons before have probably heard me talk about this because it shows a huge disconnect between how many Westerners perceive the term casual and how they use their language, whether it's English, German, or whatever, in talking with other people. Because casual in English is very, very different from casual in Japanese. So let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll jump into what we actually need to do to use it. And I will be going through the Renshu lesson that we have, although we'll be talking a lot more than what's actually in here. So, first off, up until now, and we'll continue to use this, we've been talking about polite form. And polite is both accurate and inaccurate because it is polite, but some people associate politeness with a bit of standoffishness. That you're polite because you're creating a bit of space between you and whoever you're talking to. And that, maybe you think, oh, polite, I am polite. I'm nice, I'm friendly, but I'm not polite to the point where I say yes, ma'am, yes, sir to everyone I speak to. In Japanese, however, politeness is, it says it's a formal situation, but it's more in the sense that polite Japanese is the standard Japanese. It is the baseline level of politeness that you use with everyone, really. And polite Japanese is so important because you can use it with friends, you can use it with family, you can use it in the classroom, you can use it in the business, and in the business situation. And there are times when you might need to get even more polite than that or more formal, but polite language covers, everything. It's extremely convenient in that if you are not quite sure what you should be using, you can always fall back to polite speech. And there are very few, it's not zero, but there are very few situations where polite language would push the other person away and make them think, why, this person's friends with me, why are they using such polite language? To give you an example, some of you know my wife, Saki, she does all the artwork on Renshu, as well as a number of other things. And we're obviously married. We've been married for almost 10 years. And her conversations with me will still be a mix of polite forms and casual forms, just depending on the topic, the mood, a number of other things. It can be used even with those that you're closest to in life. And you need to use it whenever you're in a quote unquote formal situation like a classroom or with someone that you either don't know or someone that you don't know super well. So, what does casual actually mean? Casual speech is something that you use when you are with someone that you are closer to. This is the most important thing that we need to focus on. It's not your perception of how you speak. It's not, I'm a friendly guy or I'm a friendly girl, I'm a friendly person. I say, howdy. If you're from Texas, I say howdy or hey guys when I meet someone for the first time. I like to keep things chill. I'm friends with someone the first time I meet them. We're not talking about that. We are talking about more of a actual connection that you have with the person, with friends, with family members. And in that situation, you use what we call casual speech. In other words, casual speech in Japanese shows a very discrete thing. It shows a very clear relationship between you and the other person. It is not something that you can presume. It's not something you can make part of your personality and say, I'm going to be casual because I want to. It's just the way I roll. Compared to someone else that might prefer to be a bit more, a bit more polite, not quite as close to the people they speak to. It's not that. The issue here is that if you use casual speech when you shouldn't, it can come off as being a bit forceful, depending on what you're speaking. It can be impolite. Some people might even consider it rude. And as foreigners, which I'm guessing you're all foreigners, I don't think we have any native speakers in here. As foreigners, we do get a bit of a pass, so to speak. And if you've been in Japan, you've heard people talk about this. Some people call it the gaijin pass, as if it's a card that you can whip out from your wallet or your purse and says, I'm a foreigner and therefore I do not need to adhere to all these strict social rules that, they have in Japan. And what happens is that most Japanese people can understand, or people in any country can understand that it's not necessarily easy to, understand a culture. And so if we make mistakes, you forget to take your shoes off when you should have, or you put the chopsticks the wrong way in your food, many people will say, they'll think to themselves, it's all right. They're not intentionally being rude. They just, they don't know any better. And knowing that exists, I wouldn't say it's something we should rely on. We should always strive to be as close to, the culture that we are learning about, the language we are learning about. So we want to sound as much like a Japanese person as we can in terms of social etiquette. So casual speech is something that we use for people that we're friends with, good friends with, and with family. And if you're wondering to yourself, okay, so what's friends? Like, how do I know if I'm okay? I met this person and we've spoken online a few times. Can I use casual with them? Is it okay? And my advice is that if you don't feel comfortable knowing whether or not you should use casual, wait for them to make the first move. If they start using casual with you, then you should feel more or less comfortable to use it back with them. However, this is in the friend situation. This is if you're friends with someone, you're acquaintance with someone, and you feel like you're close enough and they start using it. However, casual speech also comes out when you have a quote-unquote power differential between the two people. When I say power differential, I mean social power in the sense of a parent and a child, or an upperclassman and someone that's younger, a teacher, a student, your boss at work, and then compared to you, a worker. And so if you are here in Japan and you start working at a school, maybe you're an ALT, an assistant language teacher, your principal might come up to you and start using casual language with you, because it's not required for them to be as formal with you because you're below them, on the social totem pole. That doesn't mean you can turn around and use casual language back with them. In fact, I really would recommend that you don't. And so to wrap all this up, casual speech is something that you're going to be using with family, if you have Japanese family, or with friends, and definitely with close friends. And with those friends, you'll get a better feel for, when you can use it, depending on when they use it. If you're thinking, well, I'm never going to have friends that close in Japan, or not for a long time, why am I learning it? Casual speech is also, you will see it all the time. Casual speech is much more common in online discussions compared to spoken or written, on paper. As well as casual speech is very prominent in other grammar structures in Japanese, which we'll learn, in the coming weeks and months. And so even if you're not talking with a significant other or a friend or family member, you will hear or use casual speech every day that you are using or hearing Japanese. So don't worry about that. Let's jump into how we can actually use it. So I have some good news for you. One of the forms of the casual speech requires no conjugation at all. We're going to focus on verbs first. And when you're talking about we're talking about present, or rather non-past. So, I eat, I will eat, I study English, I study Japanese, things like that. When you use it in the casual form, you don't have to change anything. So, what do we usually use? We typically have the mas form. Up until now, we've talked about, and I'll show you these three verbs. We've got okiru. Anyone real fast? Okiru, what does that mean in English? Let's type it into the channel. Yeah, it could be get up. There's one more meaning. Does anyone know what the second meaning is? To occur, yeah, or happen, like an event. The last one I can think of was we had that earthquake 5 months ago, and so you would have used this verb to talk about the earthquake happening. Second one on the page, hanasu. What does that one mean? Thank you. Yeah, to speak or to talk, depending on the context. What about that last one? Kuru. Great. Thank you so much. So, up until now, we've used, the mas form. If you say, I wake up at 8, you say, hachiji ni okimasu. If you wake up, or not rather, if you're speaking in Japanese, or speaking Japanese, hanashimasu. If you came to the bank or you're going to come to the bank, kimasu. However, with the casual form, there's no change at all. Okiru, hanasu, kuru. It's really nice. It's almost tempting, I'd say. It's like, I want to use that because, I don't have to do as much thinking. I can just dump that out. But be careful. Think about what we talked about before when you're using casual and not casual. So, casual forms only affect the conjugation of the verb or the adjective at the end of the sentence or what have you. In other words, nothing else changes. Everything in the sentence, is exactly the same. And it's worth noting that we're not going to talk about this in detail today. We might have some time at the end, but probably not. When you get to casual speech, there are times where you start dropping particles. And that is a rather large topic that we will get to later on. But if it's bouncing around in your head, oh, can't we start dropping these? The answer is yes, you do sometimes drop particles when you are using casual speech. And I'll tell you now, the main ones that tend to get dropped are these three. Ha, ga, and o. As someone tossed up a question, I don't use Twitter myself, and so I'm not quite sure what the social expectations are in that. But I also I feel like I've seen posts of tweets in the past where people still, depending on who it is, people still use polite language. And it's sometimes, you can look at what other people are doing to kind of get a feel for what's appropriate. But coming back to it, polite is not stiff. Polite is not standoffish. So you're going to be fine, I feel, using polite language there. Polite will never, send you in the wrong direction. Casual might, but you can always fall back on polite and be like, I'm okay, I'm safe here. So before we continue, let's practice this. This is actually the easiest practice because it requires no conjugation whatsoever. But let's talk about what's something you're going to do today. something you're going to do today. You haven't done it yet because we're not doing past tense. And let's pretend that we're all good friends. We're using casual speech with one another. And, let me know what you're going to do. We are, although there's kanji on the screen with the furigana, this is a beginner's lesson. So let's try and stick to hiragana. Or if you're using kanji, let's add the hiragana afterwards if you can, just so everyone has a chance to take advantage of what you're typing. And so I already mentioned this earlier, I think before the event started. But for me, hiru gohan wa kare o taberu. Yum yum. And if you haven't participated in one of these little practice activities, it's very low key. No one's required to. You won't be called out if you don't do so. But we hope you participate. And there's no pointing at people and saying, look at this person, look at the mistake they made. Everyone laugh at them. And there's not 20 pairs of eyes turning around to stare at you in the classroom. People are just trying out their Japanese. And people make mistakes, lots of mistakes. And it's great. Because, we do gentle corrections and this is the place to screw up. Like there's not going to be a place with less social pressure than an anonymous chat channel in Discord. So let's see what people are doing today. And don't forget, try to use hiragana if you can. So people that are not proficient yet in kanji can read it. So I see someone's going to eat some cake. Someone's going to read a book. Someone's going to brush their teeth. Go to the cafeteria. Someone is being a bad person. They said they're going to steal Kao-chan's chocolate. I hope they don't. Someone else is going to cook dinner, eat some cheese, take notes, eat pasta. As is usually the case, a lot of people have their minds on food. I totally understand that. Although I could be wrong. You probably want Kankokugo unless you're specifically studying the country of South Korea. But the language would be Kankokugo. But yeah, I'm loving these sentences. You guys are keeping them simple. That's fine. But it's really nice to, to use this casual and keep it basic. Now, like I said before, if you have questions, just throw them out whenever you want. More than likely, there won't be an official question time. And again, if you don't feel comfortable typing out an answer, that's also totally fine. You're also free to. We have 1 or 2 people each lesson. If you don't have Japanese installed on your computer and you're thinking, I want to participate, but I can't, use Romaji. And the negative form, we're actually getting to that next. So I'm going to hold off on answering that. And we will hit the negative form literally in like a minute. To the person who was asking me, I have to scroll back up and find your sentence, but it looks like you were saying, yeah, you're going to meet your friends, and meeting would be ao is the verb for meeting. And we'd usually conjugate it as aimasu, but since we're sticking with casual, we'd use ao. And yeah, if you have a question about how to say something, ask. That way, you maybe that might be something that you learn, and you say, this is a word I didn't know before, and now I know it. Okay. If you are still typing, please don't stop. Please go ahead and finish what you're typing, but I'm going to continue on. with the negative. Now, the positive is the only one that actually doesn't change. Everything else changes. But the negative's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now, like usual, we have to split our verbs into the different categories. And if you'll give me just one sec. Sorry about that. So, ichidan verbs, those are the verbs that, if you remember, it always involve dropping the root at the end. You drop the root and then you add something else. So, if we had taberu up until now, we'd say something like this. We'd say, and I can't type. Okay, there we go. We might say tabemasu, tabemasen, tabemashita. It's always dropping that root. Those are your ichidan verbs. And real fast, let's do a really quick, we've done this before, a quick review. Give me all the ichidan verbs you can think of. And when you do so, please add the English next to it. Just so we're getting some review as well. But ichidan verbs only. Those are the ones where you drop the root and then you add mas on the end of it for the mas form. So I'll give you all, I'm going to say 45 seconds. Let's see how many we can get. Miru, yes. Suru is actually not ichidan, it's a special verb. Suru is in its own category. To wear, sure, to sleep, to eat. Noboru is not because it changes to noborimasu. Hajimeru is mieru, to be seen. Oshieru. Oshieru is, can you add the English for that one? Yeah, to teach. Oshieru, to teach. Toberu is actually not to fly. Tobu is to fly. Toberu is to be able to fly. Ageru, to raise something or to give. Kangaeru, to consider, to think. All right, looking good. Okay, I'm going to say stop. Although if you're typing, please finish up. I never want to stop someone from typing. Okay, so with all the ichidan verbs, very simple. You drop the root, you add nai. So taberu becomes tabenai. Hajimeru, hajimenai. Shimeru, shimenai. Now we'll practice this in just a minute, but I want to jump into seeing all the other verbs first, and then we'll look at the rest. So all of our godan verbs, those are the ones that, have those steps. And if you don't remember the steps, or the word step is something that you haven't come into contact with, let's go back to our mas form real fast. So if we're looking at the one that's on the screen, kaku, to write, up until now, if we said kakimasu, what we're really doing is we're jumping from the U step, because if we were to write this in Romaji, you'd write ku, and we're jumping over to the I step. So kaku, kakimasu, matsu, machimasu, tsukuru, tsukurimasu. We were switching over to the I step. In this case, though, we are not using the I. You can probably guess by what you see on the screen. We are switching over to the A step. So that's, ka, that's ta, that's ra, sa, ka. I said ka already, ga. It's all the ones that have that ah sound on the end. So to make the negative forms of these, you switch over to the ah step, the A step, and then you add nai. Everything gets nai on the end of it. So we have kakanai, matanai, tsukuranai, shiranai. Now, again, we'll practice these a bunch in just a minute, but let's get the last group out. Oh, I forgot the the u verbs are a little special, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it. If we were to use the rule we just went with, we switch the U step over to the A step, it would look like this. Kanai or anai. And that just doesn't sound right. Like it just something makes you think, maybe there's a better way to do this. And so the U changes over to the wa sound, actually. So kao, instead of ka-a, it was ka-wa. So kawanai, awanai. Do you smoke? No, I don't smoke. Suwanai. That u becomes a wa. Now, let me check real fast. I was hoping we'd get to this. Oh, okay. It's almost there. Almost there. We will come back to this one, but let me just mention it real fast. Aru, when we're talking about things that exist, there's a pencil, there's a pizza, there's a house, there's an earthquake. We use aru, arimasu. However, in the casual form, you do not, if we were going by the rules up until now, we would change that ru to a ra. We'd say aranai. But we just don't do that, and we just say nai. So, the one that I always feel like I'm saying this every day, if you're out of time, you're like, I don't have any time, you say jigan ga nai. Up until now, we would have said this, if you're using the polite form, jigan ga arimasen. But we have this nice little nai. So put that in your back pocket. We'll talk about it a bit more after, I believe. But I actually wanted to switch to this one. We'll put aru to the side. And with suru and kuru, those are our two special verbs because they always are doing their own thing. And this is no difference. With suru, we have shinai. With kuru, we have, this is crazy, the ku becomes a ko, konai. So, adding that, now, if we are looking at the verb form, the kanji for kuru, what are the three characters that we have now seen it represented as? We just talked about two of them, and there's one more. That kanji can be what and what and what when we're talking about this single verb. Yeah, so we have ku, kuru, we have ki, we have like kimasu or kimasen, kimashita. And then we have ko when we're dealing with this negative form. That's all. There's no more. These are the only three. And, technically, when you look at this kanji and say a kanji dictionary, you will not see the other two because they're not technically readings of the kanji. They're just ways that the verb, has transformed over time. And it's just what it is. We have to deal with it. Okay, so let's take a break, before we continue. Let's practice this a little bit. I'm going to give you the base verb, and please give me the nai form, the casual negative form of it. Okay? And as most of you know, this isn't whoever answers first wins. It's as many people that can answer, I would like to have answer. So if I get 10 answers to each one, great. Don't feel like you need to get it out quickly. Just, answer if you can. Okay, let's get started. How about, I don't know why this verb popped up in my head first, but osu, to push. How would you say I don't push? Okay. How about if you are making something? Tsukuru. Make sure tsukuru is a godan verb, so we need that ra in there. We can't just drop it out. We need the ra. Tsukuranai. Okay. How about something that we all feel from time to time? To hurry, to rush. Isogu. Oh, you're all getting faster. Good, good. I saw one ka mixed up in there. I don't. It's isoganai, ga. Okay. How about if you are singing, utao? Good. This uses that rule that we just learned. You know, it's not utanai. That actually sounds like you are singing. It's utawanai. Okay. How about our only new verb in modern Japanese? I'm not dying today. Shinenai. The thing I keep having to tell my son when we play Pokemon. He's finally learned it. I'm like, they're not dying. They're just fainting, running away. Okay. What if I'm doing my homework? Or rather, I'm not doing my homework. Okay. Let's do a few more. Let's see. If someone asks you, do you drink? You know, and they're referring to maybe alcohol, and you say, no, I don't drink. No, manai. I said it. But I said it because it was on the screen. No, manai. Okay. And I slipped this one in. I didn't type it out, but I just said it. To smoke or to suck. But since you suck in when you smoke, it's the same verb. So you use this one when you refer to, if someone is smoking a cigarette. Suanai. Okay. And last one. Our last special one. Kuru. Kuru. Konai. And there was one more special one that we kind of jumped over real fast. Aru. Woo. Okay. This, I feel like there are more people answering now than we've ever had before, which is great. Awesome. All right, let's take a look at some sentences, and then we'll practice using the sentences ourselves. The nice thing is that, again, there's no other changes. Casualness or politeness is only attached to the verb or whatever's getting conjugated, if you have the adjective being conjugated. So if you say, I will not close the door, doa o shimenai. I'm not going to buy coffee, kohi o kawanai. And I won't come to school, gakko ni konai. So there's no other changes you need to worry about. So real fast, we're running short on time. It looks like the lesson's almost done, but we still have a lot to do. Let's practice this real fast. You all told me about something you will do today. Probably easier because the things that you're not doing, there's probably many more of those. What's something you will not do today? And again, we're all friends here, so let's use our casual form. What is something you will not do today? All right, we have someone that's clearly lying because I know they're studying by virtue of being in this lesson, but they say they're not going to study. Someone else is not going to eat mochi. Okay. Someone's not going to Japan. No. Someone will not go to work. I see a theme here. I see a lot of work. I see a lot of homework. A lot of homework. Work is popping up in a lot of answers. Other people might, they're not going to play a game. They're not going to watch a movie at the library. Not going to read a book. Not going to work. We haven't learned these particular adverbs, but if you want to say, I'm not going to do anything, nanimo shinai. Because shinai we just learned, and nanimo means nothing or not anything when used with the negative forms. But the answers are looking good. And the person with the question mark, yes, you're right. コーヒーを飲まない. Okay, let's jump into our last chunk of stuff that we need to talk about, which is, that one verb, that special verb, if you can call it a verb, des. And des is a bit more complex than you might think. But there's only a few rules, and once you get these nailed down, you'll be good. You'll be okay. So let's look at them kind of in different situations. How does it change depending on, what you're doing? So it does have a casual form, and like I said, it's da. And more specifically, let's jump into our sentence patterns. We focused on patterns for a long time, and with that, we can look at how it changes. I hear someone that might be on mic without realizing it. So please check your mic and make sure that your mic is off. Otherwise, I'll have to jump in and server mute people, but it always gets left on. So I prefer if you mute yourself, whoever that is. So let's take a look at our original sentence. This is the very first sentence pattern that we learned. I said it so many times, it sounded, so just, you were getting tired of it, but we had that A wa B this. I am this, he is that, A is B. And with that, here, one second, let me mute that person. Let me find them and mute them. And then, oh, there they are. All right, I won't be naming names, but if you find yourself muted later on, message me and I'll unmute you. Okay, so jumping back with our Ewa Bides, we're just taking that des and we're switching out with a da. Now, it's not quite as simple as that, unfortunately. So let's take a look at these sentences. Here, you always start off with a noun. And with these, kao, oki, shizuka. Those are the B's in each of those. Kao is a noun, and you'd follow it up with a da. Oki is actually, it's not the best example to put in here. It sometimes is a na adjective, sometimes is an e adjective. When you have an e adjective, you do see times when you have the da that comes after it in this situation, like oki da. However, and you're going to see in just a minute, it's much more common to not have anything after an e adjective. With the na adjectives, for example, shizuka, down that third sentence, you will have the da. So let me take that and give you kind of let me simplify for you. Nouns will be followed by da, and noun. Na adjectives will be followed by da. E adjectives, usually, and I'm going to say 90%, 95% of the time, they usually have nothing following them. Nouns typically have da. Na adjectives typically have da. E adjectives typically have nothing. So I'm going to read these sentences one more time. We have up at the top, this isn't me, this is if Kao-chan was speaking. Watashi wa kao da. Jisho wa oki da. Or more likely, drop that da. Jisho wa oki. And kanojo wa shizuka da. So more simply put, if it ends in a des, you could switch it out to casual and, stick a da there in place. But like I said, the wording here in Renshu, it says you can take it one step further. It sounds like this is kind of a rare thing. It is not. It is the most common thing to do. So instead of saying jisho wa oki da, you most likely would say jisho wa oki, or kao-chan wa kawaii. You don't hear that da all that often. So before, actually probably shouldn't jump to the next one, but ignore the writing that's on the screen, and let's practice this just a little bit. Let's practice this just a little bit. Let's stick. Now this might be overly simple for some of you, but let's stick with the simple forms. Let's stick with our basic A wa bi desu sentence, except we're going to switch it out to da. Excuse me. And let's practice, just take something, anything, something in front of you, something you know, and tell us something about it. Say, this is that. And let's stick with the positive forms. We're about to jump to negative, as in, this is not big, that is not cute. We'll talk about in just a minute, but positive adjectives only, or nouns. So for example, one person said that they're Pikachu, apparently. When it comes to why E and na adjectives act differently, there are a lot of technical reasons, and there are a number of people in our Discord that have an amazing amount of knowledge about those. But as a teacher, I usually say that unless you are truly interested in understanding them as these systems that often are written and rewritten over time as the language changes, then you don't need it. It's usually better for us in terms of fluency to not have to worry about, okay, wait, what's going on here? And that slows you down. Then just say, this is the pattern that is used. And then at a later point, you might say, oh, I want to look into that more. And you're free to do so. But at this stage, I usually just say, hey, E adjectives, it's just, you just drop it. Okay, and I haven't been looking at what everyone's been writing, but it's looking good. See lots of das on there. Now remember, if you are if you're using the E adjectives, it will be more common. So much I would say you should do this. Don't use the da. You can, but you probably shouldn't. It will sound a bit out of place due to how rare it is. So I see someone mentioned kawaii earlier. Kawaii da. I would just say kawaii. Someone said sega takai da. Just drop that. Sega takai. And so yes, so the question the person just put out, the second one would be much more common. Overwhelmingly more common. Kao-chan wa tsuyoi. Now, I see the sentences are trickling down a little bit. So let's look at what we have left. Now, this panel by itself might not make a ton of sense. It says when we have nouns, they conjugate just like E adjectives. What it means is this. So if we're talking about the negative forms, if we're looking on the left side, the first sentence in each of those rows, these are what we've already done up until now. If you wanted to say, I'm not Kao, Watashi wa kao janai desu. Now, this is something we've already done. Or the dictionary is not big. Jisho wa okiku nai desu. Or she's not quiet. Kanojo wa shizuka janai desu. Up until now, we've always put that des on the end. And so how do we switch to casual? Well, we do to des what we've done up until now. We usually switch the des to the da, but hey, there's an e on the end there. There's an e on the end, so why don't we just drop the des altogether? So we would just say, Watashi wa kao-chan janai. Jisho wa okiku nai. Or the curry that I'm going to eat for lunch. Unfortunately, it's very delicious. My wife made it, but it is not spicy because she made it for my kids to eat as well. I would say sono kare wa karaku nai. I'd say karaku nai desu if I was being polite, but just karaku nai here. Now, before we practice this, I want to jump up. Someone had a question. Actually, I'm going to hold off on the question about questions until after we're done. So whoever asked that, please hold on to that and ask again in just a few minutes. And we'll pick it up at the end of the lesson. So this will be our last little bit of practice today, is using these negative forms. But remember, because it's negative, we've got no des. Well, of course we have no des. We're being casual. But we have no da as well. It ends with nai. And so that's just how it ends. So let's think about something that we can negate. Something that we can say, it isn't this. Today is not hot. Today is not cold. I am not sleepy. I am not happy. I am not whatever happens to be. And let's take this last opportunity to try out our negative casual forms. Now, for some of our more advanced learners, you might be thinking to yourself as you read some of these sentences, a lot of these was should be gas. You might be thinking, and that's a bit beyond the scope of today's lesson. And often, all too often, sentences can have either wa or ga, depending on the context, depending on what the sentence is responding to, what it's coming after, what it's coming before. And so sentences in isolation, it's very hard to say this should be wa or this should be ga. Absolutely. But a lot of these sentences, it might be more likely that it's ga, but we're not going to worry about that today. So someone is saying that they don't feel well. Someone else said the food's not good. It's not cold. It's not cold today, or the weather's not cold. Interestingly, with Japanese, you usually don't use tenki as the subject or the topic when you're talking about it. It's not that you don't, but it's much more common to refer to the actual time that you're talking about. If you're saying today or this morning or tomorrow. And so you'll just say today's cold. Where you might be more inclined in English to say the weather today is hot or the weather today is good. If it's a word that is typically used with weather, for example, hot or cold, you can just say today or tomorrow. 今日は暑いね. 今日は寒い. But if it's an adjective that refers to something that could be the weather but might not be, for example, if you want to say the weather today is terrible. Like it's awful. Then by saying 今日はひどい, then there's a lot of ambiguity. Is it just today is a bad day or is something else bad? But then you would typically say 今日の天気はひどい. I see people are more willing to be positive in their sentences when I ask for something negative. There's less responses, which is fine. Now, just as one small thing to wrap it up, this is something that really you can ignore, just to let you know that you will see these things happen. We were saying that with the e adjectives, you drop that da off the end of it, right? But if you were using, say, a na adjective, you might say something like this. Someone, in fact, did say this earlier. Watashi wa genki da. However, within the world of casual Japanese, there's actually additional layers of casualness. It's fine layers where something gets not added, but more and more things get removed. And so even with nouns and even with na adjectives, you will sometimes see that da fall off the end. So you might see someone say watashi wa genki. In fact, the song at the beginning of My Neighbor Totoro, watashi wa genki, is, one of the lines in there. There's no da on the end of it. And it's not just because it's a song and they need to match up the number of syllables. It is, a legitimate way of speaking casual language. So that does wrap up today's lesson. We have just a few more minutes. If there are any questions about this casual stuff, please ask now. Otherwise, I will wrap it up and then I'll answer that other question someone else had. And again, I mentioned this before, but this lesson will be available here in the Discord, up in the server events list. It's also inside of Renshu. If you go to resources, Japanese lessons in the menu, all the lessons that have videos, it will appear in there. If you can find our YouTube page, which we don't really use except to put these videos up, they're also on there, but they're easy enough to get from inside of Renshu. Then those will be available. Next week, we will be talking about more casual stuff. I want to say we're going to talk about the past tense forms, which are not too bad. And that will round out all of our conjugation forms. So you will be able to conjugate anything you need to in the casual form, present, past, or future. So, hope you join us for that. And looks like there are no other questions. And so I will go ahead and end this. Thank you so much.